Hey guys, today I want to talk about something on this channel I never really got to talk about yet. So this decade in film has been really interesting. We've had some really good years, we've had some really bad years. So today I'm going to be talking about my favorite movies of the past 10 years. So these are my favorite movies of the decade. So first off, I want to say that there are many films I haven't seen in the 2010s. I have many more to see. I grew up, especially in the past 5 years. I really got into film in 2015, and I missed a lot of movies. I've been trying to catch up, but here are a few I've not seen. Room, Gone Girl, 12 Years a Slave, Spotlight, Birdman, Lady Bird, Blade Runner 2049, Inside Llewyn Davis, Gravity, Mad Max Fury Road, Zero Dark 30, Drive, First Reformed, Silence, Prisoners, Nightcrawler, Skyfall, Hereditary, Arrival, Get Out, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and many, many more. Now, here are a few films I did see that many people really loved, and I didn't like that much. Either I really hated it or I thought they were just okay. Anyway, let me get on to my favorite movies of the decade, starting with some honorable mentions. The Lego Movie, super fun, creative, hilarious, and self-aware, one of my favorite animated movies that has come out in a long time. A Quiet Place, it's a super creative and innovative plot that can get plenty intense and scary, but this film is really more about people, which I loved. It's a movie about family and the lengths parents will go to protect their children. The Magnificent Seven, I like this just as much as the 1960 version. It's incredibly self-aware of what it is and does exactly what it wants to entertain its audience, and it does so wonderfully. One of the most entertaining action movies of the past decade. Saving Mr. Banks, heartwarming, wholesome, and super depressing. This movie managed to balance a bunch of emotions while giving a very intriguing story that made me appreciate Mary Poppins so much more. Hell or High Water, well written, well shot, well acted, well paced. It's just a solid movie that has a beginning, middle, and end. A movie with such simplicity, yet so much complexity to it. Star Wars The Force Awakens, a super fun space adventure that brings back so many of your favorite characters and introduces a lot of new ones. An awesome start to an otherwise mediocre and disappointing sequel trilogy. The King's Speech, not the most exciting of movies, but still managed to keep my attention. I like Tom Hooper as a director, and this film is by far one of his better works. Knives Out, an extremely fun whodunit that will keep you on the edge of your seat constantly and contains one of the greatest ensemble casts of the entire decade. Coco, a beautifully animated movie that kept me engaged because they make you care about the characters that are on screen within the first couple of minutes. Moonlight, a beautiful looking movie that has such a unique style to it. Barry Jenkins made one of the most personal films following a very interesting person that never once feels boring. The Nice Guys, a hilarious buddy cop movie with terrific performances from Russell Crowe and especially from Ryan Gosling, which gives perhaps my favorite performance of the entire decade. The Martian, Matt Damon gives a great performance as Mark Watney, and the film has some incredible visual effects as well. This movie was great mostly due to the fact that it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it was a really fun time. Frozen, the most fun I've had in an animated movie in a while. Before Midnight, a beautiful film that shows you don't need a lot of things happening on screen to keep you interested in a scene. We need more movies like this these days. Creed 2, one of my favorite sequels of the decade because of its powerful themes and character arcs. 1917, my favorite Best Picture nominee of 2020, one of the most intense movies I've ever seen due to its insane camera work and fantastic performances. 127 Hours, Danny Boyle and James Franco worked magic together by crafting one of the most intense and painful movie watches of 2010. Captain America's Civil War takes a huge turn in the superhero genre by taking a more serious approach and giving the characters a real conflict to face. 8th Grade, incredibly painful and realistic, this film places you in this world with these super relatable characters. John Wick, a stylish and cool action movie that's very rare to find these days. Ford vs. Ferrari, a movie that can pretty much entertain anyone. This is a blast of a film that creates compelling characters, a witty script, and fantastic racing sequences. Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping, my favorite pure comedy of the decade. It's extremely funny, and it doesn't try to be anything more than it is. Andy Samberg shines in here. The songs are catchy, the jokes are set up in clever ways, and it doesn't shy away from being over the top. The Wolf of Wall Street, one of the greatest Scorsese films ever put to screen. This film creates an energetic, angry, hilarious, and adrenaline-fueled atmosphere with colorful and likable characters. And finally, Fruitvale Station, one of the most emotional movies I've ever seen. Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan turn a simple concept into a powerful drama that will make you laugh, smile, and eventually cry your eyes out. Please go check this out. It's a beautiful film. Now let me start off this list by saying that I've loved all these films for different reasons. We've had some really good films in the past few years, and this is the time to celebrate them. These are my 20 favorite movies of the decade, starting with number 20. So number 20 is a movie I was not expecting to like. I'm not really into foreign films, and there's a lot of people out there that are really into foreign films, and when I hear such great reviews, everybody raving about it, saying that it's one of the most entertaining movies that came out in 2019, I have to go check it out. And man, this really surprised me. This movie is... As you know, this movie has been marked as one of the greatest films to come out of the past decade. Parasite is virtually in every way flawless. Every shot, every angle, every performance, every line of dialogue perfectly matches the tone that they were going for. They unfold a story in such a unique and interesting way that allowed this movie to never escape my attention. Though the ending didn't entirely satisfy me, I still consider this one of the best films to come out of the past 10 years. This is so meticulously crafted. There's so many visual callbacks to notice on a rewatch. This is a really immersive film that I will always look back on for reference on how to properly and perfectly make a movie. If you haven't seen this yet for some reason, go check it out. It's a great movie for film lovers. Coming up for number 19 is a movie that I also was not expecting to like at all. It was a huge surprise. I saw the first film and I didn't really like it. I mean, I thought it was decent, but it didn't really stick with me. It didn't have that personal connection to me. And this movie really blew me away. This is... Paddington 2 was just an amazing sequel. This is a major improvement on the first Paddington movie. I wasn't a huge fan of Paddington, the first one, like I said. This was a very fun and enjoyable film, but it also had some really beautiful direction, really beautiful cinematography. It looks like a Wes Anderson movie. I can tell that's where they got a lot of their inspiration. I loved Hugh Grant as the villain. He played him so well. And the fact that he's a really crazy and really weird dude really adds to making him a really likable villain. This is a very fun family movie that we need more of these days because it doesn't talk down to its audience. There are elements that are familiar and there are others that feel really new. The ending was really wholesome. I loved it. Everyone go check this movie out. It's awesome. Coming up for number 18 is a movie that people really love and I think it's just a tiny bit overrated. It's not bad at all. I really love the movie, but there are definitely aspects of it I don't entirely adore completely. And I thought it was really good. This is an amazing movie. Maybe it gets a little too much credit, but I still love it, and it's here at number 18. It is... Inception is a really visually appealing movie that never once feels boring. The characters in here are extremely likable. It's more about the story and that they were trying to develop it, and they seriously make it work. Nobody but Christopher Nolan could have pulled this movie off. It's incredibly original. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Also, Hans Zimmer's score is fantastic. I listen to the Time theme all the time. It's beautiful. Guys, Inception is smart, innovative, and remarkably thrilling. One of the most visceral action movies I've seen ever. Number 17 is a movie that I saw the trailers for and I was really interested in, but I didn't really want to explore this universe that it was trying to dive into. It took me a while to see it. I didn't actually see it until about a year ago, but it's still really good. Number 17 is... Like I said, I wasn't really interested in exploring the Rocky universe anymore. I love the first Rocky movie. The rest of them are just okay. Rocky 4 is a guilty pleasure of mine, but it's not really a good movie at all. Creed totally blew me away. It never once feels boring. The narrative is compelling, and the new angle they take on not just Donnie's story, but Rocky's story is fantastic. The obvious best part of this movie, I think, is Michael B. Jordan, who probably is the best actor of our generation working in the industry today. He pulls off so many emotions in so many ways that makes it one of the deepest movies in this entire franchise. It's a great one. Go check it out now. I absolutely loved it. Number 16 is a movie that I saw and I didn't really like it on my initial watch. And if you go back and you see my first What I Watched in Quarantine video back in, I believe it was March, I didn't really like this movie, but really it improved on a rewatch. Then this movie is... I think I didn't like this due to the fact that it's been considered the best movie of the century, and I expected more from it. And after a disappointing first watch, I had a blast on the second watch. And in a sense, it's really become one of my favorite movies of all time. This is one of the most perfectly paced movies I've ever seen. Everything flows so naturally, every shot feels so precise, every edit fits in flawlessly. Don't even get me started on Aaron Sorkin's script, because this guy is a freaking master at what he does.
You don't think I deserve your attention?
I think if your clients want to sit on my shoulders and call themselves tall, they have a right to give it a try, but there's no requirement that I enjoy sitting here listening to people lie. You have part of my attention. You have the minimum amount.
What can I say that hasn't been said already? It's smart, it's clever, it's sharp, and even feels kind of musical in the way. Every line is set up in a really clever way that you can't really take your eyes off of the screen, and you can't really stop and take yourself out of the world. The themes are so clearly established, the conflict is so clearly established, and the dialogue, like I said, just feels so tight. It's one of those films that you can call perfectly directed because Fincher is probably the most precise filmmaker of our generation. He reminds me of Kubrick in a way. Everything just flows so perfectly, and you can tell the people behind the camera are trying to make it air-free as much as they possibly can. Jesse Eisenberg, Andrew Garfield, Justin Timberlake, and even Armie Hammer all have career-defining roles here. The Are You Still Wired In scene is one of my absolute favorites. I think it's absolutely heartbreaking. I can't really pinpoint any real flaws with the movie now. It is truly hard to find anything remotely wrong with this film's technical achievements. Number 15 is a movie I saw the trailer for. I thought it looked really stupid, but honestly, it really won me over, and it's a great theater experience. It's one of the best animated movies I've ever seen, and that is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Beautifully animated. It's so unique. It's so different. Something completely new I have not seen before. This movie really just came out of nowhere. This actually had a really well put together story. They made Miles Morales' character a very interesting character to follow. Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy are also very interesting and really funny characters on the side. Any of the extra characters were just scene stealing. The villain wasn't the most interesting and didn't have enough backstory, but I think that's okay, and I can really look over it. The comedy in this landed so well. The self-awareness is hilarious. This is a very fun and memorable movie experience with amazing and jaw-dropping visual effects and animation, brilliant voice acting, and character development. I can't wait to see what the studio will do with this new animation. It's really good. Number 14 was a movie I considered the Oscar movie, the movie that everyone's talking about. It comes out in Oscar season. You think it's just trying to win awards. It's trying to show off how talented the actors are and how great the cinematography is. And I didn't want to watch it. And then I heard so many people saying so many great things about it. Chris Stuckman gave it an A+, and I was really surprised on how much love this movie was getting, and I was curious to see what this movie really was, and it really blew me away. It is. I was absolutely surprised on how much I loved Marriage Story. It's such a realistic and confident approach at portraying a divorce. It's filled with brilliant performances that blew me away. Some of the best acting I've ever seen in a really long time. It's a very powerful movie with a lot of very powerful themes. And I love how they view both of the perspectives of both of the individuals equally. And you get enough screen time with both characters to really feel what they're feeling. It makes for a very impactful movie experience. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson probably give their best performances ever. I've heard some people say that Baumbach's script is the opposite of Aaron Sorkin. It's realistic, authentic, and every human and pause is in there to make you feel like the world is non-fabricated. There's this one scene where Adam Driver's character is trying to open a cabinet but doesn't have a handle, so he pulls it on the wrong side and it doesn't open. It's a quick little moment, but little details like that feel really special to me. That's really authentic. It feels so real, just very human actions that they pay such close attention to. This is a movie that's not easy to recreate. It's such an interesting story that hooks you in from the very first scene and leaves you satisfied in a way in the very last scene. I was in tears by the time this movie ended. It moved me in a way that no other movie really has in a really long time. It brought the most emotion out of me in 2019 when it comes to film. It's a masterpiece. I loved it. Number 13 is a movie I saw in theaters when I was a kid. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I think I really grew to appreciate it more as I grew up. I think it's just because it has such a self-aware tone and it really knows exactly what it is, and I just had an absolute blast with it. It is. The Muppets is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a really unpopular opinion. I don't care what anyone says. While I love the 70s Muppet movie, I think this one really elaborated on it because it showed what it was like with the Muppets apart and having them come back together. I think it's a really creative plot and it feels really different. I think this means it was so much more wholesome when you saw them together again. It still sends chills up my spine when they sing the Rainbow Connection together. It's really beautiful. This is an upbeat, sweet, wholesome, hilarious, and surprisingly emotional film that makes me smile every time. I love this movie. I think the soundtrack is great. I think all the actors Jason Segel and Amy Adams. Even Chris Cooper is hilarious as the villain in it. Everyone in here, there's not really a single unlikable character in here. Everyone is really funny, really likable, and I honestly had a great time with this movie. Number 12 is a Quentin Tarantino film, and there are 3 that came out in this decade, and I've only seen 2 of them. This one really blew me away. I think I have a better time resonating with this emotionally, even though this isn't the most intense Tarantino film out there. This one is. I'm not a huge fan of Tarantino's movies, okay? While I respect his vision and I love his style, I find myself enjoying his movies for the most part, but I think they're way longer than they need to be. While Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is long, and it's almost 3 hours long, I think it warrants that, and it knows that, and it takes advantage of the fact that this is going to be a very chill, hangout type of a movie, and I really respect that. I think this movie really celebrated Hollywood in a really unique way. There's so much love and passion put into this project, and the ending, I love the ending. First time I saw it, I didn't really know what was going on because I didn't know about the history behind this horrific event, but they pull the rug from underneath you, and it's just a great time. I had a blast with this movie. It's not for everyone, it's very slow, but for me, it's very immersive. It really puts me in the situation with these characters. I like the chemistry between Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt's characters. I think they're really likable. They're very different. They kind of work opposite off of each other. And I like the sweetness there. But when they're apart, I think that was kind of for the better because they did build their characters and you got to know them a little more, even though Brad Pitt's character is still a little mysterious. I still feel like they did a really good job developing everyone and giving them an arc. I had a great time with this movie. Maybe it's not Tarantino's best, but it's one of my favorites from him just because I felt such a personal connection to it. And I didn't really feel a personal connection to Django Unchained. While I wish I loved that movie more, I think it was way too long and I really felt taken out of the story. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is my favorite Tarantino movie that has come out in this century. Number 11 is a movie that came after a very popular biopic from 2018, and while I like that movie, I don't hate it like some people do. It was really disappointing, especially with its PG-13 rating, but this one really blew me away. I remember seeing the first couple of trailers for this film and remembering how it looked dumb, especially after Bohemian Rhapsody just came out. I feel like this was just a really cheap move, but this really surprised me. I had no idea how good this film was going to be, and honestly, people just pass this off as another music biopic, as another cookie cutter, formulaic movie with a little bit of energy and passion put into it, but this really resonated with me emotionally. I actually felt for this guy. I really felt bad for him, and they really developed him well. It's now a personal all-time favorite of mine. It's honestly way better than Bo Rap was, and mostly due to the fact that it really takes its time to build up its story. It's a wonderfully paced movie that used Elton John's songs to tell his life story in a musical fantasy way. It makes it for a very creative and fun movie experience. I was totally blown away by Taron Egerton's Oscar-worthy performance as Elton John. He managed to do a semi-impersonation, and he didn't feel exactly or sound exactly like Elton John did, but I think that really helped to humanize his character. You can really feel his losses, you can really feel his pain, and you can understand why he made the bad choices that he did in the latter half of the movie. By doing that, it felt a lot more fulfilling when his redemption came around. The soundtrack also is so fun to listen to, and the musical sequences are just a joy to watch. It's a beautifully directed movie with a ton of heart and emotion to it, while giving us a really entertaining and creative way to tell a man's real life story. I really loved it. I think it's awesome. I think you guys should go check it out. Even if you may pass it off as another musical biopic, it's one of my favorites of all time. Number 10 is a movie that I kind of just have a soft spot for. It was the first Marvel movie I ever saw. It's one of the biggest movies ever made. So it is. This was practically unheard of when it first came out, to be able to take a bunch of characters built up from the previous 5 films and putting them all on screen together and interacting with each other. And I think that's easily the best part of the movie. It's the interaction between the characters. They insult each other playfully, but also work together really well during the Battle of New York sequence, which is one of my favorite fight sequences of all time. It just came together very well. The dialogue here is surprisingly really well written. I don't feel like it gets enough credit for being as well written as it is. It's really witty, it's really hilarious. And I can't say it enough, the characters were easily the best part of this film to make a really colorful and fun Marvel movie. Loki as the villain was just a ton of fun to follow. He was a brilliantly written villain who just has great chemistry with everyone on screen. The middle of the film, I wouldn't say had the most action in it, but I think it really did a good job building up the characters. But the Battle in New York definitely paid off for some of the slower moments, even though they're not really slow moments. I think they really fill up those slow gaps with a lot of great character work. Go check this out. I think it is one of the best movies Marvel has made so far. Number 9 is a film that I think it really inspired me to get into films even more. I think it's beautifully shot, beautifully written, has some great performances, and the first time I saw it, I didn't really understand what all the hype was about, but I really got underneath it and really understood why people loved it as much as it is. Damien Chazelle gave us one of the most gorgeous looking movies of 2016 with La La Land. Every shot is framed almost flawlessly. The 2 leads on screen may be my favorite part of the film. They were extremely likable. They were really layered. They really brought some great emotional moments out of these characters. Ryan Gosling brought such authenticity and lovability to the screen, while Emma Stone was really sympathetic and interesting to follow. The themes of dreams versus reality, I think, are really, really profound and really make me think. That ending still hits me so hard. Even though I know how it's gonna end, it still gets me. And that's what I love about the film. I think it's just so interesting to watch. It's so interesting to follow these characters. It never really feels boring to me. I love the movie. I think it's a great time. And all the events that take place make complete sense. It's really grown on me each time I see it. And I don't think it's a bad film at all. I think it's a great celebration of cinema by making an original musical that takes its time to build up. Number 8 is a movie that I saw the trailer for. I remember seeing that trailer and being so hooked and captivated by the trailer, and it was something I immediately wanted to see for a really long time, and I didn't get to see it until about a year ago for the first time. That movie is Damien Chazelle is a master, and I think this is a little better than La La Land in a lot of ways. The script is a lot more tight. Damien Chazelle's direction with this is amazing. I think it crafts a very intimidating, terrifying, and honest and authentic and powerful a drama slash thriller. I don't really know what to call this movie. It's so weird, it's so different, and I love that about it. It's just a really awesome movie because it makes you care about the character on screen. And once you get into this character and you're following him and you start to notice down the path that he's going down, you're not really noticing it because you're so into the character. And once you start noticing those things, it really surprises you, and it hits really hard when you find out that this guy has become so obsessed with becoming something great. Seeing this passion have that sort of effect on his life. And this shows me that, I love film, and I love watching movies, and I love making movies. And this movie shows when you become obsessed with something, that it can really ruin your entire life, really. I can't give a proper review on this movie without talking about J.K. Simmons. One of the best performances I've ever seen. Yeah, this performance is that good. J.K. Simmons is terrifying in this movie. I remember seeing that first trailer and being terrified just from the trailer. And the movie totally lived up to that nerve-wracking feeling. Just go check out the trailer for Whiplash at least, and it will really give you anxiety. I mean, honestly, this movie is a really beautiful film. It has some really great cinematography, some great direction, and the sound design is also really good. I don't think it gets enough credit for that, but mixing the sound, it actually comes together really, really well. It's a movie that, when it comes to direction, I can actually say it's perfectly directed. While I don't think it's a perfect movie, I still think the direction is amazing. Number 7 is gonna be my favorite Pixar movie. It just so happens to come out of this decade. I really loved it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it really touched on so many different emotions, and you know what? It is about emotion. It is. Inside Out really showed a really smart side to family films, because I'm so used to seeing so many movies made for families that really feel like they're targeted towards children. This one really grabbed my attention because it's so smart. The idea of a kid going through puberty having something inside of them to blame. So there's a conflict outside and there's a conflict inside her brain. I think that's really amazing, and I love the writing in this. I think it's so clever. I think the voice acting is great. I love this movie. I think it has really likable characters, and it just always feels interesting. It never feels boring, and it always goes down a route that I'm always surprised that they chose to go down that route. It is my favorite Pixar movie. I think it balances so many emotions so well, and I don't think it gets enough credit for it. Number 6 is going to be a movie that I wasn't really into, but then I remember my family said, let's watch the movie, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I kind of want to see it. But at the same time, I was a little disappointed because I was in the mood for more of an action movie or something a little more upbeat. I wasn't into a documentary at the time, but you know what? I was wrong because this movie really is amazing. Won't You Be My Neighbor really spoke to me personally. Some people don't think the movie's great. I think the movie's great. It really resonated with me emotionally. And they made Fred Rogers someone who's a really amazing person, a really interesting personality that I wasn't really into as a kid. I don't really care about him, but I think as I've gotten older, I've really realized what an amazing guy this really was. He was a saint. But they make someone who's, I don't want to say perfect, but someone who's almost perfect, and having them still be relatable, because I'm not perfect. I mess up all the time. And seeing someone like Mr. Rogers, who's so kind all the time and has so much love towards people and individuals, seeing that and then feeling connected to a man that's so unlike me. And I think that's something they really pulled off really well. I think they chose the right people to interview because they have personal connections with him. And then they got some psychologists too, which I think was really interesting. And I love the animation when it dives into Fred Rogers' childhood. I think it's really unique, it's really realistic, and it really develops Fred Rogers in a way that I wasn't really expecting it to. Like I said, this movie really spoke to me. It really hit me on an emotional level. I haven't really seen this movie and haven't cried at least once. I love it, and some people may not love it, but I think you should go check it out because it really spoke to me, especially while you're in quarantine, while all the crazy things outside are happening. I think this movie is really worth checking out. Number 5 is a movie that it came from a franchise that I've always really liked, and I've always thought they're probably the best action franchise out there, but this one I think won me over completely. So Mission Impossible Fallout easily became the best Mission Impossible movie. But while there are constant superhero movies being made, it's good to see that the Mission Impossible movies are still here to say that they really are the best out there. It's probably the best action franchise of all time, at least of this current generation. This franchise has been known for Tom Cruise and his death-defying stunts. And since he does all of his own stunts, it just makes it feel so real. I mean, that's what makes it so unique. It's so visceral, it's so real. And you feel like you are in the moment with these characters. And I think that there's always one big stunt to remember in each Mission Impossible movie. Many huge stunts in this one in particular that proves that it's kind of the best in each category of fight scenes and action set pieces. You know, there's a car chase sequence, it's the best car chase sequence. There's a running scene, and now it's the best running scene. There's a helicopter chase, now it's the best helicopter chase. It's kind of like that. It's really unique, it's really different, and I think this just makes for one of the best action movie experiences you'll probably have in a really long time. I never actually saw Mad Max Fury Road, but this movie I think is the most visceral action movie of the entire decade. The acting performances are actually really great. That's the thing about this movie that feels so different from normal action movies. It feels like a film. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be a giant blockbuster. It tries to feel like a film. There's an actual plot here. And with past Mission Impossible movies, I kind of noticed they don't really have plots that matter. It's more about the action set pieces and the action sequences. But with Mission Impossible Fallout, what it does so differently is that it actually has a plot that actually stuck with me. The villains in here, the characters in here, the actual conflict, the danger, I remember everything about it. It's so memorable, and that's something that a lot of the past Mission films have suffered from. It's just being forgettable. I love Ghost Protocol, I love Rogue Nation. They're both really great films, and I would put them on this list, but they just didn't hit that beat with me that this one did. It had the emotion, it had the extremely entertaining action sequences, and it just has this sense of danger. It shows you don't really need an R rating to really feel that sense of danger. And that's what I love. Number 4 is the highest grossing movie of all time. You already know what it is. Avengers Endgame continues to blow me away at how confident it is with its storytelling, but it also makes me realize how emotionally invested I really am in this story and in these characters. The ending to Infinity War was a surprise. A lot of people didn't see it coming. I didn't really see it coming. But there definitely was something like, I know that there are more things coming. There are more movies coming, so I just didn't feel the emotion I think I should have felt. With this movie, it kind of hit all the right chords with me emotionally. They took many films to develop these characters so we are able to gain a connection to them. This way we gotta feel their loss. We gotta see them be humans, and that's what's so unique about this movie, is that you actually see our main characters, our protagonists, being human beings. They had a lot of layers added to the characters to make their arcs more believable. It makes these heroes more likable and a lot more relatable. This film is just an experience. I think it's really hard to explain to words. I wish I could just forget everything that happens in this movie and go back to the theater and watch it for the first time, because the feeling I had in the theater, oh my gosh, it's one of the best theater experiences I've ever had. And I remember seeing this movie on the day after opening day, and I sat there and I watched with my family. I didn't go to school, and then the next week I took my friends to go see it, and I kept looking over to see their reactions, and they were so excited. And they're just not those kinds of people that really get into these nerdy things. They're honestly just the normal casual viewer, and so seeing them get this excited and get this emotional over these characters really shows how well the creative team, the creative force behind these characters crafted this story. I think each act in the movie improves upon the last act while feeling very different from the last act in a very good way. It's mostly a film about people grieving, and I think that shows it has some of the best acting in the entire series. My favorite part of this was seeing the original Avengers together, seeing them in a room together, seeing them have that chemistry. There are a lot of hilarious moments in this film. There are a lot of very tender moments, and there are some gut-wrenching moments. I mean, this movie really made me feel something, and I was really surprised. I was not expecting to feel that much. This was probably the most anticipated movie of all time for me. Going into that theater, I had goosebumps. I really did not know where it was going to go, because Infinity War was crafted in such a way that the ending just left you thinking what's going to happen next, but not like you can really predict what's going to happen next just because of the things that were foreshadowed before. So honestly, I just didn't know where the movie was going to go, and so it kept going in a bunch of different places, and I honestly loved it. I had a great time with this movie. It's my second favorite MCU movie, so it's there at number 4. Number 3 is going to be an Edgar Wright film. I like Edgar Wright's movies. He maybe is my favorite filmmaker working today. He is so incredibly talented. He makes filmmaking look so easy, and he always keeps his movies entertaining. Baby Driver never once disappoints. It's a blast from start to finish. The script is really good. People don't really give it enough credit for how great the dialogue is in this movie. It's so smart. It has a certain rhythm to it. The way everything is just laid out, the way the actors deliver their lines, especially Kevin Spacey. I know we don't like Kevin Spacey anymore, but look at him in this movie. And just, how can you not like this guy when it comes to his acting talent? He is so talented, but in a way that doesn't feel like he's trying to act or show emotion. He just delivers lines, and it's the way that he delivers the lines that you can really know what he's feeling. I think Baby Driver is a fantastic movie. I don't think there's a single scene in here that really drags. It's by far Wright's most serious film. It is still really lighthearted, really fun, and I think it's a very accessible movie for people. It's really easy to like. I think it is one of the most lovable movies I've ever seen. Just the color palette, the pacing, the soundtrack is perfect. Ansel Elgort's performance is stellar. That opening chase scene is one of my favorite scenes ever. It's one of the most entertaining, fast-paced, and adrenaline-fueled movies I've ever seen, and I think you guys should go check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Number 2 is gonna be an MCU movie. It's my favorite MCU movie. If you saw my MCU ranked video, you're gonna know what it is. Like I said, it's my favorite Marvel movie. It's probably my favorite superhero movie of all time because it pushes the boundaries. It makes Steve Rogers interesting. It's always intense, and it's just all around very well directed. It's a movie that I continuously enjoy and always find myself immersed in every time. The characters are really layered. The villains are threatening. The script never takes a break. It's a fun popcorn thrill ride with some really good themes hidden in it. I just love the fact that it's a political thriller and has some very smart storytelling, surprisingly. It's not just a normal Marvel movie. I think it does have a lot of emotion and care put into the story, and that is really what impressed me about it. I think it's a really fantastic movie. Chris Evans is great in it, really easy to connect with. Everyone in here, Scarlett Johansson's really good in the movie. I mean, we've seen her in past MCU movies, but I think this is the most likable I've seen her. They develop her really well, even though it is a standalone movie and should be about Captain America. They still build Black Widow's character very well. And the score in this movie too, it's kind of terrifying in a way, just the way that they amplify the sound in certain places, and it really works. I love the movie. I think it's really tight. It's really intense. Always works for me. I think the action's handled beautifully, and it is here as my runner-up. Number 1 is a really interesting pick because almost nobody will ever agree with me on this one. A lot of people don't like this movie. I look on Letterboxd and all the people I follow don't really give the movie a great score while I give it 5 stars. It is my 3rd favorite movie ever made. I can't really say I have any real problems with it, and it's so sad because I wish people would love this movie, but I truly understand why people don't like it. It's not for everyone, but for me, it connected with me and influenced me and inspired me in a lot of ways that most movies don't, and it is Les Misérables was an interesting movie for me. I saw it fairly young. I remember I got surgery when I was in, I think, 2nd grade, and my mom took me home and we sat down and I was just eating my breakfast. And then she turned on it was an iPod shuffle, and she turned on the soundtrack for this new movie that just came out called Les Misérables, and I was like, what is this movie? And she was like, yeah, I want to go see it in theaters. It's really good. And I'm like, what's it about? And so she sat down and told me the entire story in very deep detail, and I was completely invested. Like, I don't think I've been more invested in hearing a story in my life. I would expect that the movie wouldn't be as good as the way my mom told it, but it was just as good. I think this is one of the few films that really made me recognize filmmaking, like there are people behind the camera. It's because the camera has so much personality in this movie. And a lot of people complain. I think one of the biggest complaints about this film is how bombastic it is, how big and bold it's trying to be in its themes, and having a bunch of characters and a bunch of storylines, and the sets are huge, and the costume design is so complicated and accurate. And a lot of people complain about that because they think they're just trying too hard. And I understand that complaint. It is very, very big. It didn't bother me because as a kid, I didn't notice movies like that. I just watched a movie. I just saw it as just a film, and I didn't really know that there was work put into it. And so seeing work being put into a film and noticing it and seeing that work pay off really blew me away to see just how huge these sets were. The overall budget of it, it's an amazing looking movie, and it takes advantage of the fact that it's going from stage to screen, because my biggest issue, I think, with Chicago was the fact that that whole movie could have just worked as a stage play. It didn't need to be made into a movie. It didn't really do anything different by being made into a movie besides getting these A-list actors to play the character. Besides that, there wasn't really a reason to make it like a film, because most of that movie takes place on a stage anyway, so what was the point? Les Misérables takes advantage of the fact that it's a movie and goes full on the period drama, and it has a bunch of characters. There are a lot of characters in this movie, and all of them are colorful, all of them are memorable, all of them are extremely likable, and I just found myself invested in all the storylines. And that's really hard to do, to craft something with a bunch of storylines going on and giving everyone enough screen time so you're able to connect with them, but also to to feel for them and understand what the characters are feeling and having them still be likable. That's a really hard thing to do. Also, Hugh Jackman as Jean Valjean in the movie was a very inspiring character to me, and it was one of the few performances I really noticed, like, that is some great acting right there. And so I've just never really gotten this movie out of my mind. I love the soundtrack. I love the look of the movie. I love the atmosphere of the movie. Everything feels gritty and dirty and lived in. Nothing feels polished. And Tom Hooper, he made Cats. But he also made like a mini-series, an HBO mini-series back in 2008, I believe, with Paul Giamatti. It was called John Adams, and it's one of the best period dramas I've ever seen because everything looks so real, it feels lived in, and that's what really blew me away about it. And so seeing him do a movie like this that's so big and so bold, with so many powerful themes to it, really amazed me that he was able to still make it look good while still having really great themes. All the performances in here are great, all the characters are great. The entire movie is great. I love it. A lot of people may not love it, but I think you should go check it out and form your own opinion. The other really huge issue people have with it is the fact that everything is sung live. All the dialogue is sung too. And it may bother some people, but it didn't bother me. I love it. I think it's great. It's my number one favorite of the decade, my number one favorite probably of the entire century, and my third favorite movie of all time. So those are my favorite movies of the decade. Please let me know what your favorite movies are down below and any of your thoughts on the movies that I love. It's been a really great decade, and I'm really excited to see what these next couple of years bring, especially with what's going on in the world right now, seeing if that will affect the entire film industry. This is Ethan Butler, and I'm out.